trained as a husband. It's just I can't hear higher pitches that well. May have to have you say it again, and then I may ask one of the guys to repeat it to me because it's that bad. I was around a lot of cattle chutes, and it just damaged that upper hearing in my upper range of my hearing. Well, I'm Kevin Horton. Gary asked me about a month or so ago to come in and introduce Genesis to you. And just to give you the idea, I worked around cattle chutes because I was a veterinarian in the veteran. Okay, so in Corvallis for 20 years. And then God called me into ministry. I went back and got trained at Moody Theological Seminary, and then founded 2 churches in the Bitter Valley. So that's kind of my history. I retired from the pastorate about 7-8 years ago, and been working full-time, as much as a guy 70 years old can, as a director and president of the Institute for Biblical Authority. We deal with biblical interpretation of Genesis particularly, and science of the Bible. So that's why he asked me to come in. And I will say this to this group, and I'm saying to the full church service, after Gary asked me to do this, I perceived in my spirit, because I read a prayer request about Jamie, I just perceived that he's going to be busy. And so I wrote to him and said, "Do you want me to preach too? Because you might need some time." Today. Could be today. That was his call for me this morning. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to pray for Gary and Jamie. Lord God, we know the trials of life are not easy. These times, we need that extra comfort of your Holy Spirit to walk us through difficulties. Don't know if Jamie's going home today or next month, but it looks like it's sooner than later. Give this congregation extra measure of grace to the pastor as he walks through hard things. Lift up Gary, Jamie, beautiful servants of yours, called to this ministry, faithful, now being tried. Give him strength. Give Jamie eyes to heaven, Gary comfort as he says goodbye sometime soon. Thank you, Father, in Jesus' name. And I know that's not an obvious stuff, but that was the phone call I got. So I better pass it. I know Edward's known. When I was preaching at Lone Rock Bible Church, I know how it goes. It's tough. Step on the congregation, walk their pastor. Good thing about being families, I can know. It's going. All right. So who am I? I got that turned on. I'll try not to hit that again. I'm Kevin Horton. I was a veterinarian, then a pastor. And one of the things I saw in my pastorate was the importance of Genesis and some of the things that were happening with the interpretation of the Bible when it came to Genesis in Christendom, if I will. And I trained my church very strongly, but I felt like I needed to step out and help train other churches. And that brings me here with you guys today. And so, let's see what we got here. This is working. There it is. Okay. So IBAs are nonprofit in the big city of Hamilton. And so I moved from the little town of Corvallis all the way to the big city of Hamilton, 4 miles away. And that's where we're located. And so we look at the book of Genesis, and there's a lot of fuss about it. Does anybody, let me ask you a question here, and don't feel bad if you feel like you might be given a bad answer, but how many people go to the national parks and you read the signs, how many millions of years it took for this to develop, how long ago the dinosaurs lived, and you wonder, I'm just going to ask this, does anybody get a little check in their spirit like, is the Bible really right? If you don't, you're unusual. Okay? These signs are said so definitively and carry with them the power of science. And in fact, I have been personally called on the radio. Every time I go on the radio, let me talk back, I've been on it a few times, pseudoscientist. And I've just had to make up my mind to say that, okay, they think I'm a fake scientist. I'm going to hear that sometime today, and I always do. They've never disappointed me. So that's the audience we're in. I'm going to tell you, I think we're in the best sciences. All right? And what's interesting and fun about being involved in this ministry that I am, and being a Christian in the 21st century, is science confirms the Bible better today than ever in history. And I can say that definitively. Okay? But let's look at what's at stake here. Why all the fuss? Anybody remember that picture? January 6th? I took that. Oh yeah, I was there. That's an interesting story we don't have time for, okay? But I remember flying there, and it was like a party, and I remember flying back, it was like a funeral. It was astonishing what we witnessed. And I won't go into that. Well, what happened there? And then, there's all the cultures getting canceled. You could get canceled, and boy, they were good at that. It's just started coming out how much that was going on behind the scenes. And it doesn't take long to go to Portland, to go anywhere else to see Antifa and other groups, and you go, America is coming apart at its seams. In fact, the world is. The world is. And then, I know this kind of hits home here a little bit. Clinton and the gender neutral and LBGJQL, I don't know the letters. But I just think about, how can people be confused about gender? And it's so interesting is biologists are really leading the pack to this gender fluidity stuff, and it is totally against biology. As a veterinarian, I've never seen a confused bull. They know what they're all about. It is laughable, but it is biblical that God created his male and female. And then we have the global warming thing. Oh, sorry, did I say global warming? I meant climate change. Oh, wait, maybe it's global warming this year because it's a warmer winter, so it must be this year. and the glaciers are sinking, the glaciers are growing, the glaciers, it's all terrible. We're having more tornadoes, we're having more, every time there's a hurricane, there you go. And now we're starting to find out it's a money laundering operation. Did you read that recently? The money laundering. There's millions, billions, trillions of dollars that are being laundered and put back into people's hands through this process. And then COVID brought us a $1.9 trillion help to so many poor people to be fraud. Okay, then there's a battle in Ukraine, there's and Israel, and all the things that are going on in Israel. And here's the point. And if I haven't irritated you, then you're enjoying it. But if I've irritated you, that's okay. Because that's part of my job, then I go home. Okay? So then I'll leave it for the pastor to clean up. Alright? So, but here's the point. Most people worldwide, really, truly, are trying to make sense out of their times. They really are. And here's the point. Most people in this church are trying to make sense out of our time, and how to understand this biblically. And actually understand what's going on. And I'm going to give you my thesis. All of us have been carefully taught an atheistic worldview. You have been taught an atheistic worldview. I certainly was. I went all the way through to a doctorate level in the biological and pharmacological sciences. And I'm going to tell you, I was steeped in an atheistic worldview, even though I was a believer in Christ. I was steeped in it and didn't know it. And here's the point is this, to the extent, and this is what happened to me, you cling to that worldview, even subconsciously, you're going to have trouble believing the Bible. And in fact, how many have read a verse, and that's why I brought up about the signs in the state parks and the national parks that say, 16 million years ago, or this dinosaur here and that, all this stuff, and all these things, have this little twinge in your gut. And because it's said so powerfully. And in fact, sometimes you even wonder, are we being fooled? Are we just laughing stocks of the world? Because we believe in the Bible, and it seems to talk about a world that's only 6,000 or so years old. Did you hear that? I mean, how many people believe the world's you believe the Earth's flat too, kid? There's people who say that to me. No, the Earth's not flat, but it is about 6,000 years old according to the Bible. And I can show you that much better than you. That's another story. We'll get there. Many young people raised in the church will leave Christianity when they leave home. And the reason why I'm convinced is they believe the atheistic worldview. It may not be conscious, but it's subconscious, and it's starting to grow, and it gets authenticated the farther they go up into secular education. I know, I've been there. And this was way back in 2018. Why I caught this was Fox News. This is a secular news agency. More conservative, yes, but it's secular. And their point was that Christians, young Christians, are leaving the church, and here's why. Does anybody want to know why? It is. You got it. It's a truth issue. It's a truth issue. See, is the Bible true or is it not? And if you finally come to the conclusion the Bible's not true, then why go to church on Sunday morning and why play the game? That's how it works. And so, here's the point, is the atheistic worldview, I believe, is the underlying cause also, not only the young Christians leaving the church, but of the turmoil that we see around us. The atheistic worldview leads to turmoil and absolute murderous ideas. The belief, and here's the underlying thing, the belief that science has disproved the Bible is leading the culture deeply into believing the atheistic worldview. And it's reinforced at every national park geological site or animal exhibit. We were just at Butterfly World, or whatever it is here in Missoula, yesterday with my granddaughter. And there it was all about how the animals have adapted to their new environment, and it shows how the animals are thinking this through and developing new wings and new eyes and new legs and different. And you go, wow, they are smart. Yeah, and I just the way it's written, it was overt. It was kind of hidden a little bit, or covert's the right word. It was a little hidden, so they weren't as in your face as many of them are. But I just saw it's everywhere. Science has proved this. And see, here's the bottom line. Thesis part B. Genesis is foundational to most of the biblical doctrines of your faith. It is foundation to your salvation, foundation to the coming Messiah, foundation to all these things, and it is the center of the battle. I just realized that my animations aren't going to work, so these slides might be a little wacko, but we'll make them work. All right, so we think, that's too bad this is working this way. All right. So I'm going to show you a chronology. I'll have to revise my slides for next week, but for this week, we're going to just deal with it. All right, so on there's a chronological chart of time. Starting over here at day 0, whatever that is, creation of the beginning of the universe, and all the way over to here, and the Genesis chronology says the earth is about 6,000 years old. And then the atheist chronology says the earth is about 13.5 billion years old, with the universe being more than that possibly. Well, the earth is 4.5, and the universe is 13.5, give or take a billion or 2 or 3 years, because nobody really knows. That is called the scientific chronology. That's what I'm going to put up there. But then I'm going to change it and say, and we think of it as science versus the Bible. When you think of that, isn't that what you think of it? The young earthers say it's 6,000, and that's the Bible. And science says, no, it's 13.5. It's not true. It's atheism that says that. Science has no way of teaching that. I'm going to show you that, what I mean. I hope this is going to work. So here are the chronologies, right? We have the Genesis chronology, and we have the atheistic chronology, all right? I want to talk about how science discovers things. And once you get an idea of what science really is, and I hope this is going to work because my slides are just going boom, boom instead of my animations, we'll see. Scientific method is making a method of discovering knowledge in the natural world, okay? And so we observe something. And then we make predictions of what's causing that. The apple falls from the tree. Why didn't it go up? Something pulled it down. So we're going to study this out and try to figure out. So we're going to make predictions that there's a force pulling down, and we might develop experiments. That experiment process to prove my hypothesis is called falsification. It must be a test where I can either prove it to be true or false. You see what I mean? Okay, that's what science is all about. All right, so then we're going to go ahead and test it. And we're going to test it empirically. That means in the laboratory. All right? And we're going to develop theories that match the data from repeatable experiments. So we're going to keep repeating these experiments, and yep, this works. So there we do that. So I'm going to show you how that works. Okay, we'll have to do it this way. Will that show? Oh, it does show. Okay. So we observe something. The apple falls. We make an educated guess of how that works. That's called our hypothesis. We make a guess. I think this is what's causing it. All right? So then we develop tests to test the hypothesis. And if it turns out all my tests keep confirming it, then we have a theory. But the theory still is pending further experimentation and refinement. That's science. You see that? Now, what happens if it proves it wrong? Well, then we got to rework it. Okay? Simple. All right? So how does science work in dealing with things in the past? Can we test things in the past? So I'm going to let you develop an experiment. We're going to experiment here, but we're going to first observe these candles. What do you observe happening here in these candles? Look at it. Take a minute. Look it over. Tell me what you see. At least think in your mind, all right? And just pretend they're right here. So you can smell the wax, the smoke, right? The wax burning. You can feel the heat, all right? So here's the question I have for you. Could you develop an experiment to know how long those two shorter candles have been burning? How would you do that? That would be one way, right? Like the other one, and measure how far it goes down in an hour. And then just figure out how much each one have burned down. Very good. Another way, fairly similar. You could just measure the ones that are burning. Same way, right? Measure them going down, and then extrapolate backwards. All right? So I'm asking, could you develop that experiment? Here's the answer. You're silly wrong. I'm sorry, I'm not picking on you, but you just happen to be the guy who happened to step into my trap. All right? You would have stepped in, but I figured I didn't want to crush you. All right? All right. Why are you wrong? Totally wrong. Laughably wrong. Because you would have measured that and said, well, this has been burning for 3, 4, 5 hours or something like that, right? No, it was only burning for minutes. Oh, yeah. What? Oh, yeah. Why? Why? I'm the creator here. I put those candles in that box. I drilled the holes, stuck them in, and then I took my blowtorch and they were down there. In fact, I left you evidence. Do you see the cool wax? I even left evidence of that happening, but you didn't see it. Because you were assuming two things. Candles are burning at a constant rate. You don't know that. You weren't there. You see how we apply that to the universe? We see candles in our sky called suns and moons and stars. Not moons, stars, right? and they're burning down, and we say, oh, it's been constant. How do we know that? Were you there? We say, well, time is consistent. How do you know that? Have you been to the ends of space? Do you know how time runs back out there? We don't know these things. And yet we arrogantly say, oh, here's the point. Is not only did that, I blowtorch that down, but who says those candles were the same length? You don't know that. Do you see how we make assumptions? That's the whole thing about when you go to the national parks, and the ages are 69 million years ago. They're making assumptions based on how things are happening now. You see, what we had here is we had a candle catastrophe that you weren't aware of. That was me and my blowtorch, right? And we look at the layers of the Grand Canyon. Whoa, those are millions of years to lay those down by standard forces today. But what if there was a worldwide flood catastrophe that laid them down in a year? Probably in actually 50 days. We don't have evidence of that, except they were record. And that is absolutely ignored. And in fact, I'll tell you this right now. Do you know how you know what layer, how old the layer of the fossils are? Say you find a fossil dinosaur bone, like I did this summer with a group in Glendive, and it was about this big. It was a great discovery. I was going to put a picture up, I didn't get it in here. Great discovery. And you know how they know how old it is? They look at the layer of rock, and they know the layer of the rock was so many years old. How do we know the layer of the rock is that many years old? Like the seashells that are in it. Did you hear what I said? The seashells that are in with that rock, that's the year that we date them. There's different seashells as you go farther down. There's seashells in every layer. Huh. Sounds like a lot of water and ocean stuff all over the earth. ICR, Institute for Creation Research, has a picture of a dinosaur bone with a fish with it. Well, that looks like that thing got buried in a big watery mess. You know, you see how it's a different way of thinking. My clicker stopped. Might need some help back there.
That's my fault.
I know how that works.
I'm re-downloading your files.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
All right, let's see. Okay, now let's make an application. You assume that the conditions of the candle burning remain constant when you made that decision. And by the way, I led you into that trap, so that was, don't feel bad. Everybody was thinking the same thing, but you happen to be the one to raise your hand. And so I got you. But you raised your hand too, and I would have got you, but I didn't want to crush you that much. So, but here's the point, is we all do this. We weren't there. And you see, so when we look at the layers of the Grand Canyon, we think of, well, you see how long it takes to lay out a delta? And it's water coming down the Mississippi, hits the ocean, it slows down and drops all the sediment it was carrying. And it builds this delta up over thousands of years. Oh, well, look at all those layers. They must be millions of years to lay them down. Trouble is, most of those layers, by the way, cross the entire continent. That's one heck of a delta. Number two, some of the layers in the United States are traceable to Europe, and they're the same sequence. Wow. Isn't that interesting? So here I'm going to ask you a question. Here, this is a canyon. Took this picture. It's about 400 feet, 300, 400 feet top to bottom, through solid basalt. That's a volcanic rock. How many years? Okay, we're still back there. How many years do you think it took to cut this? Did I push that button? I don't know. Cut this canyon. Now, I've taken this picture and I've taken it to county fairs in both Ravalli County and Missoula County. Oh, by the way, that's an interesting thing. The difference between Ravalli County and Missoula County. That's a whole other story. But how many years? So I remember I flipped this many times. I flipped the sign over and I have the answer. And here's the answer. Cut in 3 days. And of course, if you just saw that, and you don't know who I am, and you're at a fair, you're going, Martha, guy's crazy, let's go! And what I'm able to pull up, which is so cool about it, is I'll pull up the National Forest Service map that shows this. Okay? This was cut by Lake Missoula. Glacial Lake Missoula. How many are familiar with that? Are most of you familiar with glacial lake? How many don't really know what that's all about? Okay, don't feel bad. There's probably others here. You were brave enough to raise your hand because you saw him get beat up. Okay, so that's good. Or I didn't know about it for 20 years. I remember seeing those lines on Mount Sentinel and going, well, North Dakota, they kind of go like this, but here they go straight. That's lake lines. All right, when that dam burst at the end of the ice age, following Noah's that ice age, okay, when that burst, it cut that in 3 days. That massive flow of water. More water was backed up behind that dam than Lake Erie and Ontario, Great Lakes together. And when that hit Washington State, it cut that in 3 days. And that's Blues Falls. There's signs there from the state parks of Washington to confirm that. Okay? So to know what really happened in the past, you have to know somebody who's been there. And there isn't anybody alive today, is there? Unless there was a creator who gave us his record. Okay? So here's the point. The scientific method is not capable of assessing the past without the potential of great error. You see that? So when they say those signs that this is 68 million years old, really? How do you know that? Were you there? How do you know that day? That's just assuming everything's going the same. It's the same canon mistake as was made right here in this room by most people. We assume that. We don't know. We don't know that. So when we think of it as a Genesis chronology versus the Bible versus science, Bible science, it's really Bible versus an atheistic worldview that's imposed upon science. It's imposed upon science. So what we're going to do, and we'll see how long is this class supposed to go, Tell? Oh yeah, it might. well, and here's what I planned, is I'm here for 2 weeks, so we'll go as far as we can today. We'll find a place to quit, and then we might take up some more, and I have some more other things that I can pick up next week too. Because I want to get into the interpretation issues, and I'll do that next week. So we'll see how far we get along. So when we think about the Genesis timeline, it starts out with, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. All right? Quickly, I'll explain this to you. In the beginning, one word in Hebrew, Barashit. Barashit is one single word, and it has a compound, because the ba is in the, if you will, and then Rashit is beginning. What's that referring to? In a bigger concept. Beginning. Time. The first verse of the Bible says time begins. Isn't that interesting? And when does it begin? When God creates, what's He create? Heavens and the earth. But verse 2 says the earth was formless and void. So what did He create in the first verse? When it says the earth? Matter. And where did He put the matter? The heavens. Space. He created space and matter. What's interesting is Einstein is showing us that's time. He was thinking about time. What is it? And he came to this definition, which is as good as we can get. Time is the interval for events to happen within space and matter. That was figured out in the 20th century. In our Bibles. That ancient book, it already told us that. It said time began when space and matter were created. It's the most scientific statement of any ancient book there is on the origins. Time begins when space and matter. So that's what the biblical worldview is. Because it's all guess. We can't figure the past out. It says matter and space act, and boom, the universe self-originates, and we call it the Big Bang. Did you catch that? Dirt and space acted and made the universe. Chemicals just boom and made itself. Tell me which one's more scientific. Somebody created, time begins when God creates space and matter, or space and matter just acts and creates the universe. How in the world does it act? It's like it's got volition. It decided, let's work now together, all of us molecules, and we'll make the universe. And we'll make it perfectly balanced, and we'll make it. Yeah, Yeah, well, there you go, too. I mean, the origin of matter is even another quandary that's trying to be solved. And, it's people work at it their whole lives. And they work at it with tenacity. Because why? If we don't figure this out, then we got to say somebody else made it. And who wants to believe that? I'm being a little facetious, but it's true. All right, in Genesis 1:11, we're still in the first chapter of the Bible. God creates life, animal life, in 48 hours. Now, he had already had created plant life, but it's interesting, the Bible doesn't speak of plants as alive in that same sense. The Bible speaks of plants as kind of almost like machines. And then life are those that have a nervous system. Isn't that interesting? That's interesting, but that's the way the Bible reads it. So he creates life in 48 hours, and the atheist model is, this is true, isn't it? You know this, evolution. Matter creates life over billions of years. Think about that. See, we don't say it that way. It just spontaneously. No, the matter created life. That's the creator. That's why we call it Mother Nature. Our mother made us, and that's why we worship what? The Creator. No, wait a minute. Do we as a nation worship the Creator? No, we worship the creation. Somewhere in the Bible it says that. Maybe Romans chapter 1. They worship and serve the created creature rather than the Creator. Is that Romans 1? I'm not sure. Might be wrong on that. Okay, Genesis chapter 2. Now here's the issues. Abortion, infanticide, euthanasia. Those are world issues today. They're world issues right here. They are battle lines between the Raleigh County line. On one side, we're much more pro-life. On the other side, much more pro-choice. If you like that word. Pro-abortion is probably a better word. Either way. And why can't we do that? I mean, if we're just animals, think about that. What are we? Do you see what's the difference? It's a matter of what we are. And I'd love to teach you what the difference is to be human, because I'm a veterinarian. And I work with animals. And my ethics were distinctly different than MDs until recently. Now MDs have an ethic that is closer to a veterinarian. Because we are just animals according to biology. No, atheist model. So according to the Bible, what are we? We're image bearers of the living God. Genesis chapter 1 and chapter 2. We're image bearers of the living God. And that sets us as distinct and valuable, and just the simple short of it is, that's where we define that humans aren't the same as animals. And if we're not the same as animals, we require special protection. And that's why we are very cautious when it comes to life. Very cautious. On the other hand, the atheist model says matter that created itself into the universe now creates humans in the image of apes. And so we apply our animal ethics to humans, and that's why we can abort, that's why we can put people down. In veterinary medicine, we had a bottle set in a special place that was pink, because there's no other medicine that's pink, that we would use to put an animal down. Kill it. Euthanasia. Ethically, I don't like doing it all the time. But ethically, sometimes it was really okay. But I did that as a veterinarian because my ethics said this is an animal. It's hard. I didn't like it sometimes. Sometimes, actually most times. But they now have the pink shot in many of the physician offices in Oregon, in Canada, in other states. It's just too far behind. Why? Because we're just animals. You see, the distinction comes from Genesis. Is it to be taken literal? Are we literally different from the animals? Wait till you see next week as we follow that through. All right, then here we go with the marriage and LGBTQ and all those different issues, right? Well, all right. Humans, well, we're made male and female. And now, we kind of laughed at that earlier, but that's what the Bible teaches us. It's so fun to work through that scientifically, how you ask an evolution is, how in the world did we evolve male and female over millions of years? Now think about it. Asexual reproduction is one animal reproduces into two animals. And those two into four and four is very effective. Right? In sexual reproduction, it takes two animals to make one. That's less effective. So why in the world did natural selection choose that? But oh, that's just the start. Think of it this way. Over the course of millions of years, an animal, wasn't it human, it was something pre-human, develops all the male reproductive system. Without your mind going together right now, it's kind of weird to think this way, but the whole male reproductive system, and dies. What did that do? Nothing. Somewhere in the course of millions of years, another one of those same animals developed by spontaneously ovaries in the female reproductive system. And all the hormones and all the sort of things necessary, mammary glands, the whole works. And dies. How do we get reproduction? No. You have to have a male develop all by itself. You have to have a female develop all by itself. And they have to be in the same exact period of time in the millions and millions and billions of years of evolution. And then they have to evolve close enough together to find each other. And then they have to figure that all out, and then boom, it starts. Absurd. How do biologists answer this? They don't. They don't even address it. It's absurd. Oh, look at this. Good job. Way to go. Thank you. All right. So God creates humans, male and female. That's the best answer. There's no other way to figure it out. But the atheist model, matter creates sexual reproduction out of nothing, and that allows for all these different crazy ideas. As we stray from the biblical idea, the world gets crazy. I want you to get that. Genesis chapter 3 hits us home here. Yeah. Genesis chapter 3 says, through Adam, sin enters the world. God curses the world and death by sin. And I'd love to unpack that because that is one of the most important chapters in the Bible and is foundational to all human thinking. It is also foundational to how do we work through these situations when we're grieving. I even thought about preaching it today because it's so foundational to our thinking on how to deal with grief. You see, the atheist cries out, he says, first tell me, Christian, how can your all-powerful, loving God, he's got all the power, create a world like this with the pain, suffering that leads to death? Tell me how your loving God can do that. Genesis chapter 3 answers that question. We should unpack it today. I don't know. Think about that. Sin enters the world, and death comes into the world as a curse. Give you the insight. The death curse came upon humanity so that there would be a son of the woman, prophesied in Genesis chapter 3, who would come into the world, live a perfect life, and be able to die to save us from our sin. And it's prophesied in Genesis chapter 3. Son of the woman. Son of the woman. Sorry for not talking loud enough. Yeah. Okay. But the atheist model, death is a natural process and necessary for evolution to occur. It's just part of life. And as we die, we pass on genetics. Those of us who are more successful, we pass on the genetics of success, and we grow into higher and higher and higher organisms. Total different worldview. Death is a good thing in the atheist model. Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple, when he died, that was his view. He's just passing on, and the world's going to evolve greater and greater. And he said some things like that. I should keep this quote. Well, no, sin is a curse. It's hard, it's terrible, necessary. And I'll love to unpack that for you. I'll think that. So when death comes to a congregation, this is really hard to even say this right Well, pastors who have sucked into this this atheistic worldview, death is God's good design. Really? There's no reasonable answer for the thing. But you take Genesis literal, and I will be showing you in the next week. There we go. Oh. Okay. This is a sin-cursed world. Humans brought the curse by our sin. It's our fault, not God's fault. But it's also His mercy. All right? Now listen, here's the important thing. The pain is the same, but the blame is on humanity. Let me give you an example. After the death of the spouse. Why, God? You can't remember. How was that another funeral? Young man, his dad just died. When I get to heaven, I'm going to slug at him. He literally said that. Well, it wasn't great theology, but he had the right focus, okay? Because we are all in Adam, and if we were just, it was you and your wife, we would do the same thing. We're tempted that way, all right? But if the literal Genesis goes further than this. You see, God reverses the curse by placing the curse upon His Son. And so the pain is the same. Okay, don't get this wrong. You can't go up to say to somebody and say, it's all going to be okay, your wife's in heaven. Yeah, we know that, but she's not here. I'm speaking from personal experience on that. God works everything out for good. I know that, but I still hurt like crazy right now. Pain is the same. It's the same. But, why? Because God is reversing the curse to save us from our sin and give us new life in Christ. You see how Genesis is vital? Vital. Should we go on? We got a couple minutes, or should we stop there and talk? Anybody have any questions? Yeah.
My brother works in Glendive showing baptism. He
Ah.
has tumors for baptism. I was curious. Did you go to the Paishas?
Oh, yes.
My brother probably was one thinking about it.
Oh, you might have? Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that was where we found that big hadrosaur lake. Yeah. Yeah, it was one of the students with one of the Bible camps in Lewiston.
Yeah, I guess I got a question towards what you're teaching.
Okay.
You touch on carbon dating.
Yeah.
But that's also based on just time.
Sure it is. And this is what everybody says, carbon dating. But the age of the Earth is not based on carbon dating. It's based on radiometric dating. Now that sounds like, well, it's the same thing. No, it's not. Carbon dating is when living things are alive. There's things that happen in the atmosphere called lightning and such like that changes a nitrogen atom into a carbon but radioactive carbon atom. And it becomes part of so if you use CO2, so you have a radioactive carbon that is taken in by plants. And then those plants are eaten by animals, and those animals are eaten by people. And those plants are eaten by people. And so all of us have a little bit of radioactive carbon in us. In the carbon dioxide, in the sugars that we eat, because the sugars are made by the plants, etc., the starches. And so there's a little bit of radioactive carbon in us at the time of our death. And all our life we're taking some in, and then when we die, the clock starts, and the radioactive carbon will disappear. Half of it will be gone in 5,730 years. And then another half will be gone in another 5,730 years. And so by 50,000 years, you can't detect it anymore. Well, what scientists have figured out is, well, you could measure the amount of radioactive carbon in a living creature that died and know about when it died. Well, the trouble is, say that animal died before the flood of Noah. How was the atmosphere then? We don't know. It might not have been lightning, because it did say it didn't rain. So we don't know how much radioactive carbon. So if we get something from way back then, if we see any radioactive carbon, it must be less than 50,000 years old. Okay, that helps us. By the way, we do find that. So carbon dating actually works for us. Now, radiometric dating is what we use to measure igneous rock. That means volcanic rock. That means mantle. If You know, the Earth, we have the mantle, that's all the volcano, that's the stuff that's shooting out in Hawaii right now. All the red stuff coming out and blasting, that's volcanic. And when it cools, or when it comes out and cools, that's day one. And so what they do is they try to measure chemicals in there that are radioactive. And they try to measure, well, they assume how much of the original, let's say, uranium. There's some uranium in some of that material. And they measure different steps as it deteriorates. I think there's 13 steps down to when it finally gets down to its last stage of lead. And they know how many years it takes for each half-life to go. And they measure how much uranium was there, and then figure out how much is left and how much lead's there, and they can give a date of, oh, it was 69 million years ago. Now, what's wrong with that? You don't know how much of the lead was there. You don't know how much of the uranium actually deteriorated from lead. Or was the lead there already to begin with? You don't know that. How much washed out and in and out during 30 or 60 million years? We don't know that. It's false. Example. Radiometric dating has multiple different ways. There's the uranium to lead, there's different, there's argon, there's strontium, there's different chemicals that deteriorate. And you can use them all to measure. So Mount St. Helens, that erupted in 1980. There were lava domes that developed. That's all new rock. It's only a year old. It blew off. 3 times it blew off. Then after 12 years it stabilized. A geologist went up there and took some of that new rock that we know is how old? 12 years old. And set it in for radiometric dating. You know how old it was? 12 years old. No! 350,000 years old. All the way up to 2.3 million years old. Does radiometric dating work? It doesn't work. But that said, and you guys don't understand it, I barely do, and we don't understand it that well, and it's said with a lot of authority, so we say, oh, it's radiometric dating, it's that old. We don't know these things. Remember the candles? We don't know the conditions of that magma coming out. Now what's interesting, we do know from Mount St. Helens, and we find out those are all wrong. All their assumptions are wrong. Good question. Any other questions? All right, so next week we'll finish up a few more chapters of Genesis, because the area of Genesis that's in question is Genesis 1 to 11. Genesis 1 to 11 takes us all the way through the origin of life, the origin of the universe, origin of life, male and female, the difference of humans, takes us into death, now the death curse, and by the way, if the death curse is right, that means there was no death before Adam. That means dinosaurs didn't die before Adam. I have to think that through. Then it takes us into Cain and Abel. Now we see a world under the curse, and we see murder come into play. Then we see the flood of Noah and the Nephilim, the giants. And then we move from the Nephilim and the giants and the flood of Noah, we move into the Tower of Babel and the origin of the races, human races. By the way, how many races are there in humanity? One, yeah, the human race. Fill that out the next time you write one of those forms from the bank. You know, and say, what race are you? Check the other box. I write in human, and then hand it back to them. I did that when I was in veterinary practice. Gosh, it might have been the 1980s, maybe 1990. And the banker looked at that and he kind of smiled, you know. And I said, what are you going to do with that? And he says, well, I'm required by law to look at you and write down what I think it is. And I went, that's a bunch of garbage, bro. You know, but that's what they were forced to do. I did that recently on redoing my gun permit in Ravalli County. And I turned that into the now this is Ravalli County, it was kind of fun. And I turned it into the sheriff's department, and they all looked at that. They just started laughing. We had this conversation, and the whole place erupted with laughter, because they all saw through it. That was kind of cool. The sheriff's a Christian down in Ravalli County. That's a whole other story. Okay. Let's stop there. And we're going to switch gears, and we're going to look. Our goal is to understand how to interpret the scriptures. So the next hour in church service, I'm going to teach you another hot potato. See, 2 hot potatoes in the Bible. The bookends. Genesis 1 through 11 and the book of Revelation. How do you interpret that mess up, huh? So I'm going to help you with that and show you it's the same way. And in fact, it proves it to us. We're going to try to work through that today. And if you don't go to sleep, you're going to walk away going, I think I got that. So we'll see how we do, okay? We'll see how we do. And we'll give that to you. But let's close in prayer. Again, let's remember our brother, Pastor Gary, and his wife. Lord God, again as a group, we pause. Life is hard. We are under a curse. Lord, give us the strength to walk through this, to help carry, because you'll be carrying during this time. However this goes today and the next weeks, or whatever is coming, we don't know that. But Lord, we do lift up Gary, lift up Jamie, pray your Spirit strong there. Lord, we lift up this congregation. Father, we need to know our theology to understand that, so that we can walk through this knowing it's rough, it's hard, it's terrible, it's a curse. One day it'll be set right. Praise God for that. So bless this congregation in their strength to support their pastor and his wife through this time. In the name of Yeshua, Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen. Okay, thanks everybody. By the way, there is, you can sign up for our newsletter if you'd like to get that, and stuff about IBA on that table back there. Oh, thank you.
That was Sunday school, never happened.
I was raised in a very conservative church. Well,
Hey, how we good, buddy?
I started reading.
I'm good.
And then